Welcome to another presentation of the Relationship Toolbox, a show about learning the skills for building positive relationships with others. My two fellow mediators who usually accompany me on this show are on vacation, so they will not be with us until our next show. But today I do have some special guests who will be helping me with the theme of teaching feelings to children. So I'm privileged to be able to have my own grandchildren here, and I'll let them introduce themselves so you will know who they are. Aaron?
Okay. Hi, my name is Aaron. I'm 11 years old. My mom and my dad are divorced. I live with my mom and my stepfather. Leah is one of my three sisters, Leah, Adeline, and Emerson.
Hi, my name is Leah. My age is 9, and I have 3 siblings, Aaron, Adeline, and Emerson.
Very good. So understanding and being able to label and respond to our feelings is a very essential skill, as we've been talking about in past shows. It's no different for children than adults in our ability to communicate with each other and the need for us to be able to do this with some precision. Oftentimes, children will lack the skills to either label their feelings or identify them, and therefore have a difficult time communicating what is going on with their feelings to others. Oftentimes we say to them, well, use your words. And when we do that, actually, if they don't have words to use, that advice is not very helpful to them. So this can leave children in a very vulnerable state, wanting to be heard, but lacking the ability and the skills to express their feelings. So today we're going to show a little bit about how we can, as parents, as adults, begin to demonstrate to children, show them, and educate them about the need to express feelings and to help them expand their feeling vocabulary. Most children by the age of 5 or 6 can understand the basic feelings of happy, sad, angry, and afraid. But as we grow older, our emotions become more complex and situations become more complex, and we need to be able to have a vocabulary to express that to others. So how do we teach this to our children? How do we expand their vocabulary? To start with, we can begin to break feelings down into into groups of words, and then ask our children to give us examples of other words in that category to expand that. So I'm going to illustrate this with Leah and Aaron today, and I'm going to start with a particular word that we can put into a category, and then ask them if there's some other word they can think of that would mean the same thing, but also be slightly different. So the word I'm going to start with, I'm writing upside down here to my side. Okay, so if we were dealing with words that express happiness, what other words can each of you think of that might also say happy?
Joyful.
Joyful, okay. And what other one did you say?
Cheerful.
Cheerful, okay. Aaron, can you think of any?
I was going to say cheerful. I don't know, she kind of took mine.
Okay, all right, that's all right. So this is the idea of it too. As we expand our thinking and the children's thinking about this, they will begin to give us other words to mean similar things. But each word has a different variation of the meaning. I know once when I was working with kindergarten children, I showed them pictures of people in doing various things and then asked them, what do you think this person is feeling? And I got the usual happy, mad, sad, glad, that type of thing. But when I asked them, can you think of another word for those feelings, they gave me, to my surprise, they gave me more feelings. So it is possible if we model this for our kids and if we ask them to do this. So let's continue. And let's go now to another category that may be a little bit different. Okay, so the category is angry. What other feelings can you think of that could mean angry? And why don't we start with you this time, Aaron?
Okay. I think other words that could mean angry are frustrated, furious.
Okay.
Mad.
Mad.
And
Okay.
he took my other one, furious.
Uh-huh. Okay. So what about irritable, crabby,
Frustrated.
frustrated? Yes. So see, as we add more words to this thing, each one has a little different meaning to us. So that's the importance of learning more words than just angry. Oftentimes, a child might say, "I'm angry," and the person who hears this is left to figure out, well, how angry is this? You know, and they don't really know until we use a word to let them know what it is. So let's try one more. And this one will be okay, afraid.
Scared.
Scared, all right. Uh-huh.
Trying to think.
Maybe confused.
Confused.
A little bit confused, yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
What words were you using when we were talking about coming to do the show that you felt a little bit
Nervous.
Nervous,
Oh, yeah.
sure, which is a natural thing to happen with it. So the other words for that might be I feel fearful, I feel anxious, I'm freaked out, I'm panicky, I am scared, offended, embarrassed. I am, sometimes you could even say, I feel victimized. What would that mean if you said, I feel victimized?
pressured.
There's a type of pressure, yeah? And it feels like when you say you're a victim, that someone may be taking advantage of you, you know, and doing something to you that makes you feel like you're kind of helpless at that point. Okay, so we have now a way of expanding feelings by just adding a category. So other categories that parents can use in this would be a category of hurt, sad, helpless, confused. These are other categories to ask children what other words could you substitute for those that might mean the same thing. So another thing that we need to be aware of, which I forgot my little tube here, didn't I? And that is degree of feeling. So if we had like a thermometer here with the bottom of it would be just a little bit or would be cold, or maybe if we had a column like I showed you before with numbers on it, low numbers on the bottom, high numbers on the top. So if we wanted to show just a little bit angry instead of a lot of anger, it would be a number at the bottom of the scale. Maybe a 1 or a 2 anger. And then if we get it higher and higher until the time we get to the very top, we need another word to show that. So what would be a word we could show that, or say, that could be just a little bit angry?
Maybe frustrated.
Frustrated, okay. And let's come up the scale a little bit. If we're a little bit more angry, what word might we use now?
A little bit mad.
Okay, mad, yes. And if we go all the way to the top,
Furious.
furious, okay.
Fuming.
Yeah, okay. So the idea then is to, if someone were to say use your words, and you have all those words, to let them know just not only that you're angry, but how angry you are, that really can communicate to someone else where you're at. So sometimes what happens is when children do not have that vocabulary that we just talked about, that they're left to, since they don't have words for it, to act on it. So what do you think they do? They're real angry. They don't have a word for it. They're not using their words. What do you think happens?
Maybe like they get out of control or something.
Yeah, they begin to they get physical. They get out of control with it. And then it really becomes a problem with it. So that's why when you do have the vocabulary and a parent or a teacher says, use your words, if you know the words, it works. But if you don't, it's not going to work for you. So here are some other ways that parents can teach children a feeling vocabulary. One is called parallel talking. And in this case, the parent or the adult who is with the child actually is talking about his or her own feelings in a situation. So that the child is just listening to this and learning a vocabulary by being immersed in the parent expressing these feelings. So if a parent came home and from the grocery store and forgot to get something that was important, and the parent said, "Oh, I feel so frustrated to have forgotten that." And that child is hearing frustrated as a possible way of describing that, and watches how the parent handles that then. The parent becomes the model. Another method of teaching children feelings is to name the feeling for the child. So have you ever had a time when you wanted to say something, or you just felt a way, you didn't know what word to use, and you just, like that, you just had to do something, and there was somebody there who could put a word to it for you, could say, looks like you're feeling pretty frustrated, or looks like you're feeling pretty furious about this. And how did you feel when somebody sort of gave you the word?
Felt kind of that I was being kind of helped so that I could fix what was going on.
Mm-hmm. Okay. It sort of helps you to kind of monitor and take care of your own feelings, doesn't it? Somebody kind of gives you a little boost by giving you the word for it with it. And it lets them know, or you know too, that they understand what's going on with you, doesn't it? When we get to that point. Okay, another way of explaining feelings to children is to discuss feelings that you are in a story you might be reading to them, and the characters in the story, what might they be feeling, and talking about that. Also, just watching TV together and asking your children, what might that person in that movie be feeling at this point, and giving them words for it. It's important as parents and as teachers, anyone dealing with children, to actually ask and make the request that children use more feeling words to help expand this. And one caution is that as adults, sometimes when a child tells us what he or she is feeling, we have a tendency to say, well, you shouldn't be feeling that way, or I don't know why you would feel that way, and we start either criticize them for it or discount the feeling. And that just makes things more difficult for the child, because the child now may be fearful of expressing it because it's not acceptable. So have you ever had that kind of thing happen where maybe you're in a situation and you say, I'm feeling this one, and someone says, well, you shouldn't be feeling that way? Does that happen sometimes or not?
I think it's probably happened to me, but I just can't recall it.
Okay.
Yeah, me too.
But you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to go another step further in teaching the concept of feelings to children, because Leah and Aaron are pretty developed in this area, and so I'm going to go ahead and push it a little bit further. So what I'm going to ask you this time is a kind of an adult question. I do work with adults who sometimes struggle with this as well. And the question is, what do you think is the difference between a thought and a feeling? So I'm going to draw here on my board. I'm not a great drawer here, but if I make a head here, and we'll put the eyes in, and the nose, and the smile, and then sometimes we'll see in maybe a comic or something like that, we'll see this thing come out like this. They call it a bubble. And that represents what the person is thinking. Okay, so when I ask the question, what is the difference then between when we are thinking and when we are feeling. What comes to mind? How would you describe the difference?
Thinking is like when you're thinking like inside your brain, and then like I forgot the other one. What was it?
So it's in your brain a lot
Yeah.
when you're thinking? Yes. Okay. All right. Anything more, Aaron, you want to add to that?
Sometimes feelings are on the outside, and thinking is always on the inside.
Yeah. It's hard to tell what somebody is thinking. Sometimes it is hard what they're feeling too, but sometimes you can read that. Yeah, with it. Where on our body do we feel, well, let me ask that different. When we're thinking, where does that occur in our body? When we're thinking?
Your head.
In your head, in your brain, isn't it? Okay. When you're feeling, does it change? Where are we experiencing feelings in our body?
Your heart.
In our heart, yes. Where else?
Stomach.
In our stomach, yeah. I've ever had that thing like when we're talking about being anxious or being scared, that yes, sometimes we feel it in our stomach, kind of a sick feeling, and we're not sick, it's just our nerves. So we can feel it there. We can feel it in our hands sometimes, in our arms.
Your
So
legs.
yes, yeah. So there are a lot of places where you can experience feelings with it. How many words do you think it takes to express a feeling?
One.
One word,
One.
right. So if someone says, well, I'm just feeling like this is the worst day ever, have they expressed a feeling or a thought at that point?
A thought.
A thought, yeah. So a thought takes how many words, would you say?
More than one.
More than one, right, just a lot of words. And especially if someone starts off, I feel like. If they use that word like, generally they're going to be talking about a thought and not a feeling. But if they said, I feel angry, or I feel too hot today, I feel worried, you know now that they're using one word, you can understand what they're meaning then. Okay, so it's important in some communication skills to know the difference between what you are thinking and what you are feeling. All right, so by preparing the children to know the difference between thinking and feeling, this helps them to use some of the skills that we've talked about in other programs, namely the I message and also the conflict cycle. So let's look at that for a minute. I'm going to take my little man off of here. Have either one of you heard of something called the I message?
You know, the one from the phone.
Okay, and that's very typical, Aaron. You know, when I mention this to kids, they say, oh, an iMessage, sure, it's on your iPhone. No, that's not what we're talking about. And we're not talking about I this way. What we're talking about is the word I instead of you. Do you know what it's like when maybe if a teacher or a parent is scolding you and they're going, you in it, and you in it, and you in it? What happens to you inside? What type of feelings do you get?
Yeah, feeling a little bit down.
Yeah.
I'm feeling like embarrassed if like it was in
Yes.
front of like a lot of kids or something.
Uh-huh. Sometimes when I'm teaching this to adults, just for an exercise, I have one adult sit down and the other one stand up and do the you, and then ask the adult sitting down, what are you feeling now? And they're describing the kinds of things you're talking about.
I bet if you were like sitting down, you'd probably like your heart was beating like so hard, like.
Yes. Okay. So one of the things that we do is to teach the I message. The I message is saying, this is what's going on, I. So it's talking about myself instead of accusing somebody else. So an I message looks like this. And this is a more of a simplified I message than we've talked about before with using adults. But so we start out with, I feel. Okay, and this is where we need that vocabulary. Because if you go, I'm feeling, I feel, and you go, I can't think of what it is, then you're not going to be able to communicate it. So the first part is, I feel, and the second part is, when, And the third part is actually you ask for something. So I feel annoyed when you take my phone without asking. Okay, now I will make a request. I wish you would ask me before you take my phone. Okay, so hear the I's in there. And it's easier for someone to hear that instead of hearing a criticism of that. So let's take something like that and see if we could try a situation ourselves and come up with something where you might be able to try an iMessage. What would be a situation where you would feel any of the feelings we've been talking about? Can you describe a situation?
I felt embarrassed when we had like this concert, and it was like it would play like music and you'd sing, and then it would stop, and then you'd run around and tell jokes. And I was one of them to go up on a microphone, and I accidentally messed up, and the music teacher said you have to keep going, or else like the song's gonna need to stop because there's gonna be all these people that are doing jokes, and I accidentally messed up, so I just like had to say it all over again. I was like so embarrassed.
Okay, so in that case, you could say to the coach or the teacher who was talking to you, I felt embarrassed, was it? What mistake did you make?
So we had a concert, and I made a mistake when we were telling the jokes.
Okay, so I feel embarrassed when I made a mistake telling the jokes. And in this case, you could use the last part of it, the request to actually compliment somebody. So you could say, thank you for helping me go on afterward.
Yeah, like we had partners, and my partner like helped me, so that was like a lot of help.
So that becomes a kind of a nice communication back between the two of you. Okay, so iMessages can be used not only for a problem, a conflict between people, it can also be used in what you described as a way of complimenting someone for doing something that was helpful to you. What about if we do have something, a conflict that we have going on with somebody, something we don't like? What's an iMessage that we could use? Can you give me an example of something like that?
I feel frustrated.
Okay, when?
When you cut me in line.
Okay, very good. And what would be your request?
Can you please maybe ask me before you do it? If it's for like a good reason. Like sometimes I know before school got out, the teacher said you're allowed to move as long as like you're not next to somebody like that you would like to talk with. So if you get in line and then your buddy comes up next to you, you have the right to move to the back of the line or the front of the line.
Okay. So in this case, you made the request of the person to ask you beforehand. And how did that person take it?
They were kind of fun with it.
They were okay with it? Okay. So it kind of shows a respectful way of communicating your feeling about that. What would be a way that you might do if you didn't use the iMessage? If you kind of really blew it, you know, and when somebody came up like that?
I feel like if like I freaked out over it, it would just cause like a verbal fight between us, because if somebody blows up, then the other person's gonna blow up back at them.
Sure. So what would be some of the words you might use if you blew up instead of using an iMessage? I feel when. If you blew up at them, what would you be saying?
Probably the opposite, like you and accusing the person.
Okay. So what are you doing stepping in line like this? You know, what are you thinking? Who are you? And that kind of thing. And that creates some ill feeling then, doesn't it, between people? So that's the idea of how to use an iMessage. So another thing that I wanted to point out too, Aaron, you have done, we've got this on the board here, you picked up on something at school that you wanted to actually write about. So could you tell us in a few minutes here what you did?
So for one of my class projects, we did our artist writers, which was you had to draw a picture and had to write an essay about what you thought the year would be like. And for this, I said it shouldn't be bullying within the school. And for my essay, I wrote like solutions to bullying, like don't be a bystander, always like stick up for the person, stick up for yourself, tell an adult. And then I also said that you can go to anyone, not just your friends. Sometimes people think their teacher as friends, and that's true, but also teachers can be have kids that are their friends.
Okay.
So it's kind of, you can have somebody to go to.
Okay. So we have that displayed here for that reason, that was something that you did on your own. And Leah, have there been any times when you have been really proud of the way that you have expressed something to someone?
Yeah.
Okay.
When one of my friends was like really sad, like I helped them and I was proud of myself because like I helped them and I felt better, so
Yeah.
I like felt proud.
What do you think about the idea of understanding and being able to name feelings? What do you think about that?
Can you say that again, actually?
Well, what's your thought about that? You know, here I am talking to parents about, you know, why I think it's important. But from a kid's standpoint, from your standpoint, do you think it's important to understand feelings, have names for them, and so forth? How do you feel about this?
I think they should have names like and stuff because like for like feelings you want to say it instead of like using like your actions. Like you could use your actions, but don't get like physical and stuff because you want to like say how you feel.
Okay. So
Because actions always don't play out as charades. They could go physical, as you said before.
yeah, and people react even stronger to physical things, don't they? Yeah. Well, I really want to thank you for coming on the show. This has been really helpful to hear from children themselves, and you're getting to be pre-adolescents here, actually, rather than young children, shall we say. So obviously you've learned a lot and quite grown up in the way that you can handle some of these things. So I guess that's the end of our show for today, and I want to thank you for watching. And please tune in next time when we will be talking about how to use, for adults, how to use the apology.